Hello, pilots, and welcome to episode 10 of the Ramjet Anvil Show. I'm your host, Oliver Nelson Jr., the developer of All Hail Spider God, Screw You Bear Dad, and Mazorca, a ghost in Italy. And today I'm very happy to again be joined by my fellows at Ramjet Anvil, Martin.
Hello, that's me.
And Frank.
Hi.
And we got a user question, actually, on the last video that we really wanted to address and integrate directly into the show. So I'm going to read it real quick right now. It's from someone named Marcus A830. No, it's Marcus A380.
It's Marcusa, I think.
Marcusa.
Yes.
Marcusa 380.
Yeah.
And they said, great game, had lots of fun with it, but for the parachutes, the human turning into a pill of some sort, the capsule we named last episode, is really irritating. I want a seamless transition between wingsuit and parachute, but with the player model being persistent. And the really cool thing about this is that that change is already implemented in the game partially, and on the way, as you can see right now, through
3, 2, 1.
Oh. There we go.
The delayed gratification.
Why? Oh,
The delayed gratification is what makes it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was very dramatic timing. But yes, look at this.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
See, the character is sort of dangling there in some obscene amount of pain, but it is implemented in the game. You can't play this yet, but yeah, Marcus, what you were saying, the goal of the game being completely persistent when you switch between modes, that's already on the way right now. And actually, Frank can provide more details about that, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. So,
Awesome.
yeah. I want to talk about why we think Marcus' comment is so important. Because it's always been the ideal of Volo to make what you see on screen what is really happening in the game. And so if you move your weight a little bit to the left or to the right, then that's what's happening in the physics engine, and that's what's making a change in the game, in the physics engine. If, for example, if you bring your arms closer together, your wing surface will decrease and you will generate slightly less lift. Those kind of things. So with parachute unfolding, it's actually the same thing. So the parachute unfolds itself over a couple of seconds and you are literally pulled back. You will decrease speed rapidly, and all this is done by the physics engine. And so the real key here is that there's no animation involved. And so what makes this ideal so great, I think, and why this game is so cool is.
And of course, we're completely unbiased in this assessment.
This is a documentary, not an advertisement. You're completely correct.
Well, I think the game is cool, and I don't care what you think. No, so what I think is cool about it is that the game never lies to you. Like if you're spinning, maybe you can show that. If you're spinning wildly in the parachute mode, and you then switch back.
Oh, this was a bit of a. No, we can do it here.
Yeah, and you let go. You will still be spinning, and that's.
We do it a couple times.
And that's something that makes the game profoundly interesting to play and to learn.
It makes all of your movements feel consequential because it's not a pre-canned animation. You're waiting for the right point to trigger. You're literally controlling every aspect of that flight experience.
Exactly, and you don't. The game never tells you, okay, this is the right move, or this is the wrong move, or you did something slightly weird here. It's all natural.
It's organic.
That as well.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a fun fact. You can just do weird stuff and then say, oh well, I didn't know it did that. Even though you made the simulation, it's still surprising every time you play it.
Yeah, there's just a lot of room to play with this and figure out what it can do far beyond what you sort of set as the basic things that it could do.
Yeah.
So to clarify, this aspect of the game, the seamless transition between the ragdoll model and the parachute model, the fact that that's the same model, that isn't in game yet. That isn't in the current version of the beta, correct?
That's true. Yeah, we're still ironing out. It's still rough. Let's say that it's.
Actually, it's so rough that I need to restart this build.
Yeah. And so this will feel very, very rough at the moment. So much so that I don't think that it is much of an improvement as of yet. But it will be.
Yeah, you're right. In terms of gameplay, this has taken a couple of steps back just to tie all these things together.
Yeah.
And now we need to really bring the whole thing back together again.
Yeah.
So what does this entire integration mean for the future of the game itself?
Well, there's a couple of interesting things to say about this. Let me first fix this parachute up so I have something I can fly.
I do really love how right now it feels like they're unwillingly being taken on a journey by their parachute. Like their flight has been hijacked.
Exactly.
Anywho, we were at... so with this update, even though it's not playable yet, what does the direct integration of the player model into the parachute flight model mean for the future of the game? What angles of experimentation and gameplay have been opened up as a result?
Yeah, there's a couple of angles to tackle from this. One thing that I like about this is that now we can see that even though the little pilot person underneath the canopy is not really good at flying underneath a parachute, doesn't really know what to do with it, the physics of it don't crash. And that's really important to mention, because we weren't at all sure that this would just work stably. This is quite a complex physics model at this point. You have not only the full ragdoll for the character having to do things, but the parachute is attached to it. So it's a whole big system of linked things. And you know from lots of other games that use physics that it's quite easy for physics systems to glitch out and, I don't know, crash the game or at least make the animation look goofy. And so most games tend to not rely on physics for core gameplay. And even though we have, for the wingsuit, tying these two things together, the wingsuit system and the parachute system, and just seeing that it works, that makes me very happy. So, as you mentioned, that opens up some avenues that we weren't sure we'd be able to start exploring. So, as Frank mentioned, there's no pre-made animation in the game in the classical sense. We don't go into external software and then create like a walk cycle and then just play it. A good analogy for games that kind of do that is you've kind of like a car simulation model for your character, and it just slides through the air or it slides across the ground, and you stick a walking animation on top of it, and it looks like there's a character walking, but they're not actually walking.
So like something that you might see in Just Cause or Grand Theft Auto, for instance.
Yeah. Although those games have interesting sub-cases, of course, where in Grand Theft Auto, if you get either shot or you get drunk, you start ragdolling. And that's where interesting stuff starts happening. They have these types of blends with pre-made animation systems and live ragdoll systems.
And that's typically where we see some of the more interesting sandbox movement and etc. coming from, when you have all the different blends. But it's still at its core canned animations being mixed together to make this thing that looks good.
Yeah, and you see in very recent years, like last year, there were a couple of talks at the Game Developer Conference and the like about taking these systems to yet another level, because these animation systems usually require teams of like dozens of people working for several months to create elaborate motion captured animation rigs for characters, and it just takes a long time to do for all the motions that are possible for a character to do in a game. And so that's not, obviously that's not something we can do, but we have figured out that as long as we stay in this domain of flying, of just falling through the air, like, we don't have characters that have to stand upright all the time, which is a very difficult balancing act. So our behaviors are a lot simpler than something like walking on the ground, and we can use full physics for them. So underneath the canopy, right now the character doesn't really know what to do, but it won't take a whole bunch of rocket science to teach this character a rudimentary sense of balance and preservation of momentum. And we can also start actually doing things like holding the character's hands up and physically pulling on those lines to make the canopy move, and pull on the brakes and pull on the risers. And then we stick, and that's really important, we stick to that concept of what you see on screen is actually what is happening. And of course we can't promise we can do that for everything in the game. Like, we want our characters to eventually be able to walk on the ground, be able to jump off cliffs, because that would add a lot to the game as well. Like I mentioned, walking on the ground is something that that's in the academic research stages for virtual ragdolls.
Wait, so this is... It's easier, it's literally easier, well, not so much easier, but it's less complex to have a character flying and falling through the air than to have them just walk along the ground. I wouldn't have expected that. Well,
there's edge cases, of course. If you do elaborate acrobatics in the air and you start really dancing around, like you see people in wind tunnels can do the most elaborate dance choreographies, and that's where it starts getting really complex again. But just this wingsuit character right now, for example, the motions that the character is going through right now are a lot less complex than having to balance yourself on 2 feet on the floor and sort of catching yourself as you keep falling forward. We're really good at that as human beings, but it took a while for us to get there.
So you can teach, basically you're saying that you can teach the flight model everything but a sense of self-preservation.
Self-preservation is hard, because that ends up being a very open question as to what that actually means. But in Volo Airsport we can ask narrower questions, like can you roll to the right as I press right on the control stick? And you go, sure, I just have to tuck my arm in a bit and I lose lift there, and it's already sort of happening. It's a lot less complex than having to then rebalance yourself and catch yourself with another foot. So
interesting.
What's interesting about this is that at least we can keep thinking about these very problems, and instead of just going with the traditional way to do it in video games, we can take some parts of the game where it really matters, like the wingsuit flying and the parachute flight, and try and do as much with physics as we can to stick to this ideal that we have. And so this is not something you can play right now, but for this reason, it's very exciting to know that it's at least stable.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Speaking of stable, and speaking of all the things you said, for me it's mind-boggling talking about this really complex, interesting flight model you all have created that does not cheat or lie to you at any points, that there's still so much to be improved. But we actually had an interesting comment from Tulipothar, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, last week, that actually goes directly along those lines. The quote is, "I can't seem to get the canopy to act realistic." And we actually talked about realism versus fantasy in a previous episode of Ramjet Anvil Show, which you might want to check out. Pulling the brakes or risers don't do as much as I want. I can't get it to slow down enough to make a somewhat realistic landing. Just slides on the ground at 50 kilometers an hour until it stops. And you can actually see that right now in Martin's gameplay. I like that you can make this pilot steer by weight shifting, but it should be more steerable with the toggles. Tons of stuff about the canopy flight, but won't write a novel here. And what you were talking about earlier does seem that, yes, this flight model is very stable, but there is a ways that this can potentially go, and that it can be improved, correct?
Yes. Actually, everything in this comment is just plain true. There's a lot of work to be done there. So, how we look at what we see on screen right now internally is all the moving parts are sort of in place, but and if we pull in the car metaphor again, it's kind of like we've built a car. The steering wheel is in place. It has 4 wheels. There's a chassis. You can put fuel in it, and it'll sort of run as you turn the ignition. But it's not a well-oiled racing machine yet. Not at all. That takes some extra polish and some extra tuning. And so in that regard, we still have a lot of work to do. But it makes no sense to start fine-tuning all those systems until all the rudimentary parts are in place first. So for me, it didn't really make that much sense to start polishing the parachute physics until we were sure that we were going to do something like this with the actual character underneath instead of a pre-made animated character.
So actually the whole development cycle that we took, like starting with the pill-shaped dude and then later adding the wingsuit dude underneath is really essential to our understanding of how these parachute physics work and how they work with the existing systems like the wingsuit.
Yeah. So the system worked out a little bit better with the initial, I think, test releases, and then I started messing with some of the moving parts again, and the balance got lost a little bit, and now with this particular version, the parachute is not that flyable at all. But yeah, as I said, all the moving parts are in place, and now we get to start making this work pretty, sort of, and consistently. That's a good word to use. Actually, let's use that in place of realism, because as you said, we did an episode about it, and just realism is not that useful a word. Consistency is, and what you certainly want is that no matter what kind of parachute you make, it flies in a way that looks consistent with how the parachute looks, how you would expect it to fly. And most of the time that doesn't quite happen yet. But we're gonna get there. The same goes for deployments as well. Deployments right now with this ragdoll character underneath are just wild and erratic. But one of the nice things we can start doing now is actually taking the hand of the character, pulling out the pilot chute, throwing it out behind the character, which pulls out the main canopy.
Blending that physically based system with some minimal animation systems that directly benefit it.
Yeah, so one thing that is my little bit of homework for the next couple of weeks is coming up with a more robust animation system for creating these physical behaviors for this guy. So he doesn't only know how to wingsuit, but he also knows how to pull out the pilot chute, and he knows how to grab the lines for the parachutes and all these other things. Make a nice little animation system that has physics integrated into the core of it.
So you're basically just gonna keep making him smarter. This is how Skynet started, Martin.
It'll be a long time before this guy takes over the world, I tell you. But who knows? Maybe soon you'll see all kinds of blue little fellas flying through the sky, dominating the Earth. Who knows?
Now, actually, there are worse dystopias than just a bunch of really rad flying people just going through the air, maybe occasionally shouting insults. They rule the skies. We all have to ride unicycles.
Can we do that? Just have characters in the game occasionally go, I can't actually curse on this show, I just remembered. I had great examples in mind as well. Anyway.
Screw groundies!
Yeah, keep it all in-game, keep it all diegetic. That's a good way to do it.
This mountain sucks!
Those are all great insults. Yeah, but I think we've covered sort of what the next plan for this is, and
making it not only stable but more consistent to further hit the ideal of whatever you see on screen is something you're actually controlling, or is a direct result of your actions.
Yes.
So with that said, if people want to offer more feedback about the flight model, this, again, is not playable yet, but if you'd like to offer more feedback about the flight model or simply the act of changing into something else to use the parachute, you can actually download the beta for the game now, correct? It's free to everyone who already has a copy, right?
Yep, you can get it on Steam, and instructions on how to install the beta will be on screen now, I guess. Yeah. So please let us know what you think.
Volo Airsport is also available on itch.io. Please let us know what you think. The sooner we get a bunch of testers going through the game, the sooner we can actually release the update, because we'll have the feedback we need to know, okay, this is polished, this works, this doesn't. Yep. And of course, if you like these videos showing a quite in-depth look behind the scenes of Volo Airsport, you can like, comment, and subscribe, and tell your friends.
Yes, tell your friends, all your friends.
About the impending Blue Dude apocalypse.
Yes.
You say apocalypse, I say utopia. And with that, I'll say until next time, pilots.
Take care, everyone.
See you underneath.